Hello guys, welcome back to the Popcorn Podcast. My name is Dylan, of course, and I hope everyone's doing fantastic. It's good to be back. I know this video is extremely late. It's supposed to normally have been uploaded in the first week of the month, but here we are halfway through May and I'm only just getting around to sort of making this video and everything I watched in April. I've been incredibly busy with uni assignments and exams. I'm currently in exam season. I've got one more exam to go, so I'm done. But as a result, I sort of haven't been able to watch as many movies as I usually do. Normally if you guys have been tuning into this sort of monthly series on the channel, you'll know that I sort of normally watch around 50 to 60 films, whereas now in April I've sort of only managed to do half of that. I think I did about 25 films, but regardless, I'm here and you guys are here, so without further ado, let's head on over to my Letterboxd and check out everything that I watched in April. So starting off the month of April, I watched Voyage into the Night on the 1st of April. If you guys don't know what this movie is, it is the directorial debut, I'd say, first feature film of Panwa Sutinon here on YouTube, who goes by Flick Fanatics. If you guys want my full thoughts on that, on the movie, I made a video on the channel for it. I will leave a link to it in the description down below. I highly suggest you guys check it out, especially if you are an aspiring filmmaker and you want to sort of take those first steps and see what kind of sort of playing field you can be potentially working with. I think this is a great example, and I think it's a really great sort of first feature film from Flick Fanatics. So my full thoughts are obviously over on that video, which will be linked down below. So on the 2nd of April, I watched The Father. If you guys have been tuning into award season this year, you'll be no stranger to this film. It stars Anthony Hopkins as an elderly man who is going through, who has Alzheimer's, and it sort of takes his perspective throughout. So there's several moments in the film where he's forgetting things, he's forgetting people, and it's such a disorientating experience because the way the film is shot, the way the film is told is of course from his perspective. So you really get a sort of good and realistic insight into what someone with this condition would potentially be going through. And I think from that perspective, this film was really effective. I think Anthony Hopkins delivers one of the best performances of the year. Of course, he won the Best Actor for it at the Oscars. I personally thought it could have gone to either Anthony Hopkins, Chadwick Boseman, or Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal, of course. But regardless, I think it's a well-deserved win. Yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think you guys should definitely check it out. It's a good watch. Moving on the 3rd, I watched Chaos Walking. Now, this is a sci-fi action sort of film starring Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley as the leads. It's also got Mads Mikkelsen, so a strong cast. But does that mean the movie is great? Absolutely not. Here, I really did not like this film. I think it was sort of doomed to fail. I think it was supposed to come out 2 years ago or something, but it only came out this year, and there was apparently loads of reshoots, and I think it really shows in it because this is, I think, one of the messiest sci-fi films I've watched in recent years. It was really, really dull and boring, and just the concept was cool, I guess, but aside from that, it's not really got anything new that's going for it. And I'm really surprised as well because this was directed by Doug Liman, who of course is a great action director. So I think he came on board to do the reshoots and take over this project. But yeah, this film just did not do it for me. Anyways, moving on the 5th, I rewatched Life. If you guys don't know what this film is, it's essentially a sci-fi horror set in space, and it's got an incredible cast with Ryan Reynolds, Jake Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Ferguson, and I remember watching this film in cinemas back when it came out with my friends, and I thought it was a really, really effective horror. It's very much like Alien. It takes a lot of inspiration, but there's enough new and innovative direction, and the performances are great. I think it's definitely worth checking out. I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, so if you're in the UK, check it out. I think it's a really good watch if you haven't seen it already. But I will say, on my first watch of this film, when it came out in cinemas, I probably would have given this an 8 out of 10, a solid 8. But I feel like it's one of those films, the more you watch it, the less effective it becomes. But still, regardless, good film. On the 6th, I watched Untitled, directed by, of course, one of my favorites, Denis Villeneuve. This was his sort of the film that sort of the last film he did before sort of fully breaching into Hollywood. It's a French-Canadian film, of course. I watched this back in January for the first time, and I was absolutely blown away, as you guys can tell by the 5-star rating. I think it's an absolutely devastating film. There's I think it's pretty genius as well, the way it's told. And yeah, I showed it to my friends and their jaws were on the floor half the time. So definitely recommend Untitled if you haven't seen it. It's one of the best foreign language films that I've seen, and you probably ever will see. So check that out. On the 6th, later, I watched Greta, starring Isabelle Huppert and Chloe Grace Moretz, and this is sort of I don't want to say psychological thriller horror kind of film. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about this one. I give it 2.5 stars. It wasn't that great. The first half was okay, but the second half just sort of went into sort of ludicrous territory, and it sort of became a bit laughable. I only kind of watched it to fill in some time because it's quite short, but yeah, didn't do it really. On the 7th, I watched American Assassin for the first time, starring Dylan O'Brien and Michael Keaton. The physicality in the action scenes and the hand-to-hand combat and whatnot are pretty good. However, it really isn't anything new in terms of sort of the espionage action thrillers. It's nothing you haven't seen before. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those, it's all right. It's all right. I'll say it's not bad. It's not great, but it's okay. It's okay. But anyways, on the 8th, I rewatched one of my favorite films of all time at this point, really, and that is, of course, Damien Chazelle's La La Land. I have nothing but good things to say about this film. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this film. I'm sure you're no stranger to this movie. Everything about it, from a technical perspective, from an acting perspective, everything. The cinematography, this is one of the most beautiful films ever made. The music is incredible. The performances are fantastic. Obviously, Chazelle as a director really comes into his own here. And yeah, I'd say this is my favorite musical. Wasn't that big of a fan of musicals before I watched this, but yeah, I absolutely love La La Land. How could you not? Anyways, moving on to the 9th, I watched a film called Yes, God, Yes, and this is on Netflix, starring Natalie Dyer from Stranger Things, and it's essentially about a young Christian girl who sort of who's grown up in a Christian school and around a church community, and they go off on a sort of youth getaway with like loads of church leaders and whatever, and she's essentially had this really strict Christian upbringing, and she basically discovers porn for the first time, and the film sort of just takes off from there. And I thought this was hilarious. I feel like since I had a Christian upbringing as well, obviously not as sort of serious as this, I was able to sort of get a lot of the jokes, and I was very much more on board than I guess potentially if you hadn't had that upbringing or whatnot. But regardless, I think it's a really funny, I think it's quite sweet as well, this film. It's not long at all. I think it's like an hour and 15. So yeah, I thought this was pretty good, but no more than a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's yeah. Anyways, on the 10th, finally got round to watching The Handmaiden, directed by, of course, Park Chan-wook, who did Old Boy, one of the greatest Korean films ever made. And I finally got round to watch The Handmaiden, and this was just fantastic. It was nothing what I expected it to be, and I absolutely loved it. It's a romance. It's sort of this dark comedy. It's a sort of it's even got elements of sort of this neo-noir thriller in it as well. Like, there's so many different genres and tones, and that is so brilliantly balanced in this film. And there's hundreds of twists, and just when you think the film is going in one direction, it's so subversive, and yeah, in the best possible way. I am going to check it out again very soon and see if I can bump the rating up to a 5 out of 5 stars, because I think this is an absolutely fantastic piece of foreign cinema, really, I should say. So The Handmaiden, yeah, terrific. One of the best films I watched in April. Moving on the 10th, I watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who of course did The Favourite and The Lobster, which I am still yet to watch, but we'll get around to watching soon. This film was sort of terrifying. Not sort of, it was terrifying. In the sort of way that you don't really know exactly what's going on, and that sort of ambiguity and that uncertainty with the plot is actually what makes the film scarily real. And it's got really great performances from Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman, and what's his name? Barry something. He was in Dunkirk, and he was absolutely terrific in this film. Of course, if you've seen this film, you know who I'm talking about. But yeah, this was a fantastic film. I think it's one of my favorite A24 films as of now, but we'll see. Moving on the 11th, I watched Brokeback Mountain. Of course, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. It's got two of my favorite actors of all time, of course, Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal in this film. This film doesn't really need any introduction. It's directed by Ang Lee, and it's a really powerful movie, I feel. And yeah, 4 out of 5 stars from me. On the 12th, rewatched Voyage into the Night. Once again, if you guys want to check out my full thoughts on the film, I will leave a link down in the description box so you can check that out. On the 14th, right, this as you can see, it says butcher, right, but this is of course a reference to the TV show The Boys, which I finally managed to get around to watching. Absolutely love this show. I've done a big video on The Boys as my previous video. If you've seen the show and you haven't seen the video yet, please go ahead and check that out. I spent ages on the video, so I hope you guys enjoy, but I absolutely love The Boys. If you haven't seen The Boys, watch The Boys, please. Just watch it and thank me later. Then on the 15th, I rewatched The King with Timothée Chalamet. And the first time I watched this, I would have probably given it an 8 out of 10, but I feel like on every rewatch, this is like it's not. I don't know if it's on every rewatch, but this is the second time I'm watching it. It's not as effective, but it is still a beautifully made film with great performances and a gorgeous score from Nicholas Britell. And the whole sort of vibe with The King sort of reminds me very much of Game of Thrones, and you know, the whole political scheming and all that sort of stuff that happened during the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. If you have seen Game of Thrones, this is very reminiscent of that. But yeah, still I do still really like The King, and the final sort of act of it is great, and Chalamet really steps into this role and makes it his own. Anyways, moving on. On the 18th, I watched Nobody. This is a new action film by the same guys who did the John Wick films, I'm pretty sure. Starring Bob Odenkirk. If you've of course seen Breaking Bad, he plays Saul Goodman, or Better Call Saul. And that was a really unconventional casting choice, but it absolutely pays off here. I mean, this film was so entertaining. The action scenes are incredible. From a story perspective, it isn't anything that new, but I still very much recommend checking this one out. It's still very new. You should probably be able to catch it in cinemas or whatever, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. It's sort of a mix between John Wick and... Actually, I don't really know, but it's a lot like John Wick. So yeah, check out Nobody. Let me know what you think. On the 19th, finally got around to watching Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master. I'm sort of mixed on this one. I mean, I think it's a very, very... Don't get me wrong, I think it's a very good film. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. However, I feel like some scenes for me, I just wasn't as invested in the story as I would have liked to been. It wasn't as investing as something like There Will Be Blood or Phantom Thread. For me personally, I think this film does feature, though, some of the greatest acting I've ever seen put to screen in Philip Seymour Hoffman and, of course, Joaquin Phoenix. And if you're considering watching this film, just watch it for the performances, because they're absolutely fantastic. But yeah, rewatch is definitely needed on the master. So yeah, anyways, moving on. On the 20th, I watched A Ghost Story. Now, this is one of the most unconventional films I have ever seen. I don't even want to talk about it just because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But I feel like it's a film that you will either love or just not like at all because you think it's boring or something. But it's not a horror film. It's sort of more of this, I don't even know how to describe the film. I don't even want to tell you guys what it's about if you haven't seen it, but 100% check this out, because I was absolutely floored in some of the scenes here. And yeah, it's directed by, what's his name? David Lowery. I fucked up that pronunciation. David Lowery. Yeah, that's how you say it, I think. And he's directing one of my most anticipated films of the year that's coming up in a couple of months. It's by A24 called The Green Knight. One of the latest trailers for it came out the other day and it looks absolutely fantastic. So if you do want to check this film out, A Ghost Story, I highly recommend doing so. And yeah, I think it's terrific. On the 21st, I watched a film called No Escape, starring Owen Wilson, who essentially is a father with his family in Indonesia. And there's riots and there's sort of this political uproar that turns very violent, and this family sort of have to navigate their way around. I don't know which Indonesian city it is, but it's essentially this big, corrupt, incredibly dangerous territory that they have to navigate and try and basically survive and get themselves to safety. It's okay. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's passable, I guess. And yeah, I haven't really got much to say on that. On the 22nd, though, watched Uncut Gems, directed, of course, by the Safdie brothers, starring Adam Sandler, who gives absolutely his best performance ever. I rewatched this, absolutely loved it. It's essentially one big panic attack, the way the film is shot and directed. I think the Safdie brothers' directing style and the way they sort of make movies is so sort of unique, and it's nothing like you've ever seen before. If you've, of course, seen this film, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen Good Time, which is a film starring Robert Pattinson, also directed by the Safdie brothers, highly recommend it. It's great. 23rd, finally finished the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series on Disney Plus. I was going to do a full review on this on the channel, but you know, sort of I've been incredibly busy, so I just haven't had the time. But essentially, I thought it was alright. I mean, I liked the stuff that they did in the end with Sam and how he sort of, spoilers by the way, how he stepped into his own and became Captain America. He took on that mantle. I liked that transition. I thought Baron Zemo was probably the best part about the series. Daniel Bruhl, I think, is one of the most underrated actors probably working in the past decade or so. There were really good things that they tried to do in the series, but not all of it paid off. I didn't think the villains really were that interesting, or I didn't really get them, and yeah, I don't know. I just felt like some of the sort of the political and sort of real world themes that they tried to impose in the series felt very forced, I felt, whereas some stuff they did feel like a good choice and a good decision and something that very much served the story. However, some scenes felt very abrupt, and I felt like at some point I was being preached at, as opposed to, you know, having a very well told story. So I still think I prefer WandaVision over the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I'm excited to see how Loki does and how Loki stands up, because I think it has the potential to be the best. So yeah, anyways, moving on. 23rd, later on that night, I think I came back from friend's birthday party with one of my other friends, and we were sort of, we were kind of tipsy at this point, and it's one of those late night ones where we were on Disney Plus and we thought it'd be hilarious to watch The Last Song. It's with Miley Cyrus and Liam Hemsworth, and I think I remember watching this when I was a kid. It's not great, but there is a great song by Miley Cyrus at the end, so it is what it is. Anyways, 26th, I watched Paul Dano's directorial debut, Wildlife, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Carrie Mulligan. I think this was a really well done first film by Paul Dano. I think it was very effective. I think the performances are great, and I got the film. I really got it. However, the reason it's only getting a 3.5 out of 5 stars is I feel like it's one of those films you sort of forget about until obviously you start talking about it again. Like when you say, for example, now I'm talking about the film, I did really enjoy it. However, it's not something that left a lasting impression on me, if that makes sense. I'm not saying it's entirely forgettable, but yeah, it's just, it didn't have that oomph, basically. So, anyways, moving on. 27th, watched 47 Ronin, starring Keanu Reeves and my favorite Japanese actor, Hiroyuki Sanada. And for that reason alone, this gets a 3 out of 5 stars. It's not that great of a film. It's quite, I don't want to say bland, but it's okay, it's not amazing, but look, you put Keanu Reeves and Hiroyuki Sanada in a film together and you have my money, okay? It's a fun action film. It's got a lot of cool Japanese sort of cultural elements to it, and that I enjoyed. And yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. So my final film of April 2021 was Steve Jobs, which I rewatched the night before I had a business pitch presentation. So I sort of used this as a sort of tool to get me motivated and pumped for the next day, for the next morning, for my own project. I think this film is absolutely terrific. I think Danny Boyle does such an incredible job of sort of giving Aaron Sorkin's screenplay such life and such fluidity. The way the film is shot in a part 1, part 2, part 3 sort of structure, and the mediums that it's shot in, you know, they shoot it on film for the first act, and it sort of transitions into digital. I thought that was such a genius sort of move from a cinematography standpoint, in terms of showing that timeline. And Michael Fassbender delivers one of the best performances of his career. Kate Winslet is terrific. The cast here is so solid, and they, like, Aaron Sorkin is obviously gonna deliver from a dialogue perspective, and you know, Steve Jobs is one of them. I feel like The Social Network is one of my favorite films of all time, and that is obviously still the gold standard for me, but Steve Jobs I think is really overlooked. And like, I was asking my friends if they've seen it, only one of them had actually seen this film. So if you haven't seen Steve Jobs, definitely check it out. I think it's terrific. And yeah, that is the final film I watched in April. That is how I wrapped that month. Like I said before, only watched 25 films, but you know, still happy that I got that amount in, and yeah, looking forward to seeing what May brings. Cinemas are finally open. I think they're open today actually, so I'm looking forward to going back and having that experience. Yeah, I'm pumped to see what the future holds. All the new releases, I've been seeing a hell of a lot of trailers. I've seen Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which I'm skeptical about, but you know, I'll see what they do with it. Today I watched the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe origin story trailer that came out. That looks incredible, and yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time for cinema, but also one that is sort of uncertain. But hopefully we can sort of get things back to the way things were. I don't know if that's ever going to be the case, but regardless, I'm excited to get back in the cinema. And yeah, if you guys aren't following me on Letterboxd, my name is on Letterboxd is TPP17Dylan. I'll link it down below in the description box, so if you guys want to follow me over there, I do follow back. So yeah, I think that's a wrap for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy these videos, if you do enjoy sort of video essays and reviews and movie reviews, of course, if you do love movies, feel free to subscribe, consider subscribing, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. And yeah, that's it for me today, guys. Take care, and I will catch you very soon in the next video.